That was $40 a share initially, and people said we'll never be profitable. At $2,000 to $2,500 per share valuation, I think it could be easily twice that in 8 or 10 years.
이른바 천슬라 시대를 연 테슬라. 이제 시장은 테슬라의 주가가 얼마나 더 오를지 주목하고 있습니다. 그런데 테슬라의 주식을 42달러대, 우리 돈으로 5만 원대에 매입한 투자자가 있습니다. 바로 테슬라의 강세론자이자 아주 초기 투자자인 몬베론 회장입니다. 베론 캐피탈 창립자인 몬베론 회장은 테슬라 투자로만 60억 달러, 우리 돈으로 7조 원이 넘는 수익을 올렸습니다. 베론 회장이 보는 테슬라의 주가는 얼마나 더 상승할까요? Hello, Mr. Baron.
Hi, please call me Ron.
It's great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for interviewing us today.
Okay. 베론 파트너스 펀드는 지난해 149%의 수익률을 기록했고, 올해도 이 베론 캐피탈의 16개 펀드 모두가 시장 수익률을 상회했습니다. 놀라운 성적을 낼 수 있었던 기반은 무엇인지, 특히 회장님께서 갖고 계신 투자 철학이 궁금합니다.
Well, our funds not only have performed well, absolutely, but strong relatively. And we now have under management almost $60 billion, $59.5 billion, and $54.5 billion is profits. So we started in 1982. We had 10 million under management. 1992, we had 100 million, and now it's 59.5 billion. And we started off with very little book value in our business, $100,000, and now it's almost $3 billion of investments.
Wow!
And yeah, it's pretty amazing. And so also of this 59.5 billion, 6% of it is my family's. So we're the largest investors in our funds. And what we try to do is we try to invest in businesses that are growing fast, that have competitive advantages, that have excellent management teams that we assess as excellent, and then we invest in them for the long term. And that is really distinguishing the idea about being a long-term investor. And very few other people, our competitive advantage is investing for the long term. So most people invest all the time trying to move ahead continuously, and we're willing to make an investment in a business. We think about investing in businesses as opposed to investing in stocks. And so we're willing to make investments in businesses for the long term and recognize that there are periods of time when we'll make very little returns in the stock market. As long as the business is continuing to move ahead, stocks don't always reflect at any given point in time what's happening in a business, but ultimately they do. So we remain long-term investors, and that is distinguishing for us because very few people, when we began to invest in Tesla, and the stock gyrated wildly because they weren't profitable initially, and people said they'll never be profitable. And so we, as long as the business continued to grow at a very rapid pace, we were satisfied and able to hold that investment. Few others did. So that's distinguishing.
회장님께서는 일론 머스크를 오랫동안 알고 지내셨죠. 특히 테슬라의 아주 가장 초기 투자자로도 유명하신데요. 최근에 테슬라의 강세에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시는지 궁금합니다. 일각에서는 테슬라의 주가가 버블 국면에 들어섰다, 이런 분석도 있는데 여전히 테슬라에 대한 투자가 유효하다고 보시나요?
Well, if it was too late to buy Tesla, we wouldn't own it. There are very few companies. Last year, Tesla sold 500,000 cars. And in 2021, they'll probably sell about 800,000 or 900,000. But they're now running at a rate of 1 million cars a year. And they expect to be able to sell 20 million cars a year in 2030. So here you're going to go from 1 million to 20 million over an 8-year period of time. I have not seen any businesses where that is potential and the stocks haven't proven ultimately to be good long-term investments. And they have created a tremendous competitive advantage for their business by being the first. When we started investing in 2014, very few people believed that there would be electrification of automobiles. And there were tremendous negative publicity about, everyone tried to slow them down. So the automobile companies were opposed to them. The oil companies were opposed to them. The car dealers were opposed to them. The unions were opposed to them. And everyone in the legislatures were opposed to them because they're supported by all these lobbies. And the lobbies don't want Tesla to be successful. So there were very few people that believed that Tesla would be successful. Initially, I told Elon when I met him for the first time, probably in 2010, 2011, we didn't begin to invest till 2014. When we began to invest, I said, it's terrific hurdles that you need to overcome. When I was a child in the 1950s, there were probably 50 car companies, and they all failed. And it's a very, very difficult business, highly regulated and capital intensive. And everyone takes a very long time in order to accomplish tasks that you would think could be done sooner. But it's very, very hard to do this, as evidenced by the fact that there was just a recall for General Motors for batteries, and they were reimbursed $2 billion by the battery supplier. It's very difficult if a company that's an incumbent in this automobile industry has hundreds of billions of dollars invested in plants that make engines. How does one go to your board of directors and say, hey, I have a really neat idea. Let's invest $5 billion in a plant that makes batteries and obsolete all those existing facilities that we have that make internal combustion engine cars. In addition to that, we have a network of dealers, and the dealers make all their money from repairing the cars. And there's very little that goes wrong with electric cars. And in addition to that, in order to have a car that's connected, you have to go through the cloud. And going through the cloud is something that the dealers in the United States, the car dealers, believe they have an exclusive right to do. The car companies themselves cannot. So car companies have been trying to keep Tesla from selling cars in their country, in their states. In addition to that, when they have been able to be sold, they try to keep them from communicating from themselves with the cars. So as a result of that, the odds are stacked against someone from being successful, and also the huge amount of capital that's required to build these facilities. But once they get built, boy, they make a ton of money. And so for why Tesla remains, there are 100 million cars a year that are sold, new cars. There's 1.2 billion in the United States that are internal combustion engines. Tesla this year is going to sell 1 million cars. And so even at 20 million cars a year, that's 20 million cars out of 100 million in the world. So basically, even at 20 times what they're doing presently, there's still only 20% market share of the entire world. And the world is converting to a technology that they are the leader in. So the opportunity is enormous. The runway is very long, and they're very profitable on a per plant basis, a per car basis, and they're ultimately going to have other car companies will have a very difficult time.
Okay. Then in your expectation, how much will Tesla's share price will go up?
I think over the long term, I had been talking about a company being in 8 years, they do 20 million cars a year. We thought that they could have a market valuation of somewhere around $2 trillion. They just reported us earnings, and they earned as much as General Motors, even though General Motors had a lot more sales. So General Motors' profit margin is 10%, Tesla's is 30%. So the opportunity that they have is significant relative to their current valuation. If they're successful in selling 20 million cars a year in 8 years, then they could have a business that does somewhere around $700 billion a year of revenues, and would make somewhere around $200 billion a year of operating profit, 30% margin, $200 billion a year. That alone would be worth $2 to $2.5 trillion, maybe as much as $3 trillion. The company today is valued for $1.2 trillion. So one, if they just sell, which is a big feat, to sell 20 million cars a year, that business would be worth $2,000 to $2,500 a share. Number two is that they have a battery business. Battery business in 7 or 8 years, that should be a business that does somewhere around $600 billion a year. And if that's true, then they should be making somewhere around $100 billion a year of profit on that. That's worth another $1,000 a share. In addition to that, they also have autonomous driving, which means the car is going to ultimately drive by itself. Musk has recently said that they believe that will be the biggest creator of wealth of any product that exists. And if they are successful at selling cars that self-drive, then that means that they will have a business that is able to do somewhere around $2,000 per car per year as a fee. And if they have 20 million cars, that's $40 billion a year of 80% profit margin business. So the opportunity in 10 years, if they're successful with autonomous driving, is to do somewhere around $70 or $80 billion a year of revenues with a 70 or 80% profit margin. That would be worth $1 to $2 trillion. In addition, another $1,000 to $2,000 a share. And then that's a growing business, naturally growing much in the next 5 or 6 years. That could double again as well. They have an insurance business. They have a ride share business. So all these things together, I have been, I think, very conservative at $2,000 to $2,500 per share valuation. I think it could be easily twice that in 8 or 10 years.
A few days.
Very few people have the patience to hold on for 8 or 10 years. That's distinguishing our business from others. And that enables us to make better returns than others because we can take advantage of those opportunities and other people can't.
일각에서는 새로운 전기차 스타트업들이 나오고 또 전통차 기업들이 전기차 산업에 뛰어들면서 테슬라의 마켓 셰어가 줄어들 수 있다는 우려를 나타내고 있습니다. 이것에 대한 우려는 없으신가요?
I think that the market share of Tesla will go down over time because they're not going to sell 100 million cars a year. But I think that if they sell 20 million cars a year over 8 or 10 years, that is a terrific result, and they'll make very high profit margins on that. The other automobile companies are far behind in technology, far behind in consumer brand. They have to spend $2,000 or $3,000 for every car that they make in order to sell them. Herbert Diess, who is the chairman of Volkswagen, had a meeting of 200 executives. He was invited. A special guest was Elon Musk because Diess believes that Tesla is his strongest competitor. And and he wanted his executives who had had all these problems with supply chain to learn how it was that Elon Musk avoided the supply chain problems that other companies had faced. And of course, the reason was that other people relied upon well-established top-tier suppliers for their chips, and the problem was that those people they were sort of lazy, and they didn't go down deep in the supply chain. I shouldn't say lazy, but they didn't have as much information as they needed about the people who supplied chips to them, and about the people who supplied chips to the people who supplied chips to them. Tesla went all the way deep into the supply chain, so they knew exactly where chips were when they were needed, when one supplier was unable to supply them. And then in addition to that, Tesla has the top engineers, and they were able to give them the information to redesign the chips that he was able to accomplish what he did. Everyone else was reducing production 30% last year. Tesla doubled. So it's not such an easy thing to say, okay, I have all this money, I have all these plants, I can make all these cars, I have all these workers. Their cost structure is very high, others, number one. And number two, they don't have the technology so far that Musk has as far as making batteries and as far as making these cars. And as a result of that, Tesla is able to grow very rapidly and be very agile, and other people have a difficult time keeping up.
테슬라 이후에 많은 전기차 스타트업들이 도전장을 던지고 있습니다. 최근에는 루시드와 리비안이 주목을 끌고 있는데요. 이 새로운 주자들에 대해서는 어떻게 분석하시나요?
I think that Rivian is a very interesting company. We happen to be an investor in Rivian as a private company, and so we've done well in that investment. I think I would sort of think about Rivian as having a specialized niche, that they're sort of like the Land Rover of cars, and Tesla's goal is to be the largest producer of electric vehicles in the world. As far as Lucid, they have a very interesting car. Those people there came from Tesla, and I think there's a good chance they will have a good measure of success. But I don't think they're going to be they're not going to be a mass market producer of cars. Lucid, there's a good chance they could be acquired by another car company, I suppose. But they're a higher end, more expensive version right now of a luxury vehicle. Tesla is a car for everyone.
Right.
That's not Lucid's plan.
Yeah. 하지만 지난 3월 베론 펀드에서 일부 테슬라 주식을 매도하면서 화제가 된 바 있습니다. 당시 포트폴리오 내 비중이 과도해져서라고 설명을 하셨었는데 그 이후에 추가적인 매도나 또는 매수가 있었나요?
We bought and we've sold very little. And the only reason we have sold any is for our clients, just to make sure that the positions don't get too large relative to the size of their accounts. 2014 to 2016, we spent $380 million and bought, I guess it was 8 million shares. And we now own 6 million shares, and our cost is, we've realized about $1 billion in profits, and what we own now is worth about $6.5 billion. And, for the total investment that we had in aggregate was $380 million. It's now about $250 million after we made that sale. So, so we've made $6 or $7 billion so far. That was $40 a share.
최근에는 스페이스X에 대한 전폭적인 지지를 보내고 계신데요. 그 이유는 무엇인가요?
I think SpaceX has the chance to be as large a company as Tesla. Tesla is now valued for $1.2 trillion. SpaceX is valued for $100 million. So I think that over the next 10 years, the chance for SpaceX to become a very, very large business is there. We now have about $900 million invested in SpaceX. It's a private company still. SpaceX reason for being is they want to get to space inexpensively. So the reason they are able to do that is because they use the rockets over and over again. So Elon Musk analogizes this to someone, if you were going from New York to London on a 747, and every time you did a trip, you threw away the airplane, it'd be a very expensive trip. Instead of costing $100 or $200 million every time you want to get to space, it's now $15 or $16 million on the way to $1 or $2 million. So that's one, it gets you to space more inexpensively. Number two is that in the short term, then we think that there's going to be a very important opportunity for them to provide broadband by satellite to homes and businesses that were unable to be accessed by by fiber or by cable. And once you have the infrastructure in space, it's going to be 40,000 satellites. Once those satellites are in space, it's there, you'll be able to provide infrastructure, broadband to everyone. Whether you're in the mountains or whether you're in an island, everyone will have access to broadband. And of course, if you want to eliminate or reduce wealth disparity, then people need to be educated. You can't be educated if you don't have broadband. So that's his number two opportunity. And then, of course, you have the tremendous use for defense, government contracts, commercial businesses. Those are all businesses, and he makes satellites too.
그렇다면 일론 머스크의 스페이스X를 제프 베조스의 블루 오리진과 비교한다면 어떻게 평가하시나요?
So Jeff Bezos' business, Blue Origin, has not been able to get to orbit so far. And so they just did space trips with Captain Kirk, and space trips, and they just get to the edge of space 60 miles up, and then they are there for a couple of minutes at the thrill ride, and then they come back down again. That's relatively easy. It's a nice thing to have done, but it's relatively easy. It's probably 1,000 times more difficult to get to orbit, and it's probably 100,000 times more difficult to get to orbit and come out of orbit and land again. And so other people have done something relatively simple compared to what he's done so far. As an example, when they bid for the lunar lander, SpaceX bid against Bezos, against Blue Origin, and Blue Origin bid $5.9 billion to do the lunar lander, and Musk won the contract with a bid of $2.9 billion. So Musk did something for $2.9 billion that the only competitor was doing for $5.9 billion. So he's giving giving the government a great deal. With Lockheed, the rocket ship was able to be used. They went 360 miles into space, 360, and they stayed there for 3 days. The other one was 60 miles, and they were there for 5 minutes. So it's way different. The ability that SpaceX has dwarfs the ability for others, and his goal is to get things done. He wants to do more for less. And I'm very optimistic about the prospects for that business.
월가에서 베론은 긍정의 아이콘으로 꼽힙니다. 기업을 구성하는 다양한 요소를 면밀히 분석하고 시장 경쟁력과 성장 가능성을 확인하면 그 기업에게 장기간 신뢰를 보내죠. 당장 수익이 나지 않거나 적자를 내더라도 더 크게 성장할 수 있는 가능성에 큰 돈을 베팅합니다. 그리고 몇 년이고 들고 있을 준비가 되어 있다고 자신하죠. 이 같은 신뢰만큼이나 투자 수익률도 좋습니다. 베론 파트너스 펀드의 수익률은 지난 3년 동안 상위 1%에 들었습니다. 성장주 중심의 그로스 펀드는 149%의 수익률을 기록했습니다. 현재 포트폴리오에 담긴 기업들을 보면 물론 비중이 많은 테슬라를 제외하고서는 하얏트 호텔 같은 레저 관련주나 찰스 슈왑이나 팩트셋 같은 금융주, 그리고 진로우와 쇼피파이 같은 온라인 플랫폼 기업도 눈에 띄는데요. 전략이 어떻게 되시나요?
Well, we've owned Charles Schwab since 1992, as you point out. Then when we started, the share price of Charles Schwab was adjusted for, for splits, was less than $1 a share, 70 or 80 cents a share. It's now $80. When we invested in Hyatt Corporation in the 1970s, Hyatt was one of the the executive founder of Hyatt, Jay Pritzker. He was helpful to me, and what they are is that is a leading hotel brand in the country, in the world, that's growing faster than any other, and is selling for a discount to what the individual properties could be selling for. So the stock might be selling at 85, and the existing properties might be worth 110 or 120. And we've been an investor in that since it's been public, since probably about 10 years, and our cost is probably in Hyatt probably $30 or $35 a share, and that's now 85. We've been an investor in Zillow because we had invested in Expedia, founded by Rich Barton, who came from Microsoft, and we've been an investor in that since it's been a public company. We've probably made about 3 times our money so far, and he has more people going to his website to tell them about the value of their homes, and the opportunity here is that he is digitizing retail sales of homes and enabling people to sell their homes faster at lower cost than ever before, and to make more money on the transactions than have ever been made before by brokers. Like, for example, being able to make $10,000 when someone gets a mortgage on a house. So we have areas that we think are very interesting for the long term. A lot of it goes into digitizing standard business practices, and as a result, enabling them businesses to grow faster at lower cost.
한국 주식시장에 주목하는 기업이나 업종이 있으신가요? 베론 펀드 운용의 가장 기본, 철칙이라고 한다면 어떤 것이 있을까요?
And so we look at businesses, in all different countries. We even have investments in Korea right now.
Okay.
And not the funds that I manage, but our international funds have investments in a large shipbuilder in Korea, have investments in Samsung. So we are investing in great businesses and investing in them for the long term. And we think that in the short term, it's just noise. The market goes up and down, and noise, and people. All you have to do is watch television, and you'll be scared out of your mind. So all we do is we tell people, just screen it out. And all you should do is just keep investing for your whole life and in investments. And what's going to happen when you get to be old, if you stay alive, then you're going to get to be rich. And that's the key thing.
투자자들이 정말 궁금한 건 테슬라 같이 놀라운 성장을 이뤄내는 기업을 찾는 안목입니다. 어떻게 그런 기업들을 알아볼 수 있는 눈이 생길지, 그리고 장기 투자의 중요성은 무엇인가요?
We have 171 people here, and 38 are analysts and portfolio managers, plus me is 39. And they are trained to find exceptional people who run businesses that have tremendous growth opportunities and great competitive advantage, and we invest in them for the long term. So if you're investing as a trader, buying, selling stocks, expecting to predict what the economy is going to do, what oil prices are going to do, what cryptocurrencies are going to do, we don't really think that you're going to be able to predict what is unpredictable. And what we do is we have the big picture that the value of your money goes down in half about every 17 or 18 years. That means that if you have $100,000 in the bank today, and you just let it sit there, in 50 years, that will be worth about $12,000 in buying power. So all we do is try to find companies that we think are going to double in size in 5 or 6 years. If you invest in the stock market, it's a great thing to do. Invest in an index fund. That means you should double your money 10, 12, 13 years. That's what the stock market doubles, every 10 or 12 or 13 years. And we recommend people doing that because very few people do better than the stock market. We do better than the stock market. So if you look at Barron Partners Fund as an example, Barron Partners Fund was started in 1992. $10,000 in 1992 would now be worth $230,000 if you invest in an index. If you invested with us, $10,000 invested in Barron Partners Fund is worth $1.1 million. So the index made 10.5% a year. We made 17% a year. So that's the difference. And the way you get those returns is by investing for the long term. Since everyone is focused on the news of the day, that's not what we even care about. It's interesting to watch on television. It's interesting to read about in the newspaper, but I don't really think it helps us one way or another make money. We just invest in people that run these businesses that can become very large compared to what they are today. And we stay focused on making sure that if the businesses are developing, we remain investors. So we think about investing. What we do, we invest in businesses, not stocks. And we know the value of our money is going to fall. So all we do is we take that money that we know is going down in value and invest it in businesses that are going up in value. It's a very simple process. Faster than the economy. The economy is going to double every 10 or 12 years. If we find businesses that double every 5 or 6 years, then we might pay a little bit more for something that's worth at any given point in time. But over the long term, we think we're going to prosper. That's why. So long term enables us to invest. We invest in businesses. One of the important reasons we've done better than others is that most people, as soon as a company announces they're going to make investments in their business to grow faster, and the reason they fall is because people understand that if you're going to invest in a business to make it grow faster, it's going to penalize your earnings. And therefore, in the short term, as soon as a company says, I'm going to grow faster, stock prices go down. When we are buying all the time, we are buying especially more when stock prices fall because they say they're going to grow faster. So that gives us a tremendous advantage long term about investing in businesses. And that's one very important reason. The fact that companies in the short term, stock prices may not perform, but the business, in order to become larger, invests, and we're investing today for a business that is going to open up a factory in 5 years, going to open up a hotel in 5 years, going to spend a lot of money on research and development that's going to produce tremendous returns over 5 or 6 years. So we're always investing in businesses that are creating opportunities to grow larger. And whenever those companies are creating those opportunities, then that's when there's opportunities to buy the stock. And that's why we've done as well as we have.
베론 캐피탈의 연례 주주 행사는 메트로폴리탄 오페라 하우스에서 열리죠. 투자자들을 위한 이런 이벤트를 준비하시는 이유가 있을까요?
Well, we want to say thank you to people for investing with us. 5,000 people come every year, and we haven't had one last year. We're not going to have one this year either because of COVID. But you are in the roaring 20s again, and so so I have all these entertainers we still want to have. So we've had Streisand and McCartney and Elton John and Billy Joel, and there's a lot more entertainers. And we're going to have a terrific conference next year that will actually be celebrating the 40th year of our business existence. So that I'm hoping that in 60 years, my grandchildren, will get to look back on their lives and say, boy, I'm really proud of how the life I've lived and all the people who I've helped and the services that we've provided. So that's what I'm hoping, that our business goes for 60 more years. That's 100. I hope it goes forever. But I'm planning for at least another 60 years.
마지막으로 서학개미들을 위한 조언 부탁드립니다.
The big advice I have is to invest continuously, invest for your whole life, and don't be afraid. And there's always news that comes out, and always things that you can be concerned about. There have always been reasons to be concerned, and don't be concerned. And the big idea you should have in your head is that the value of my money is going to fall. The value of businesses in a functioning democracy will increase. And so all the stock market is a place that you can go to invest in a business that over the long term is going to become much more valuable than it is today. And that's how you're going to protect your family and make sure that you have the ability to retire and are able to meet the cost of life events.
Thank you for your great insights, and we're looking forward to speaking to you later on, maybe face in face.
I would love that face-to-face, and please, if you're going to come to our meeting next year, please let me know, and I will make sure that you get a special seat.
Whoa.
So, look forward to meeting you in person.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. 흔히